We've got another wonderful guest with us here at the National Emergency Briefing on Climate Change and Nature. If you could say who you are and who you are representing.
So, Lieutenant General Richard Nugee, a soldier up until a few years ago, and now I'm a senior advisor to parts of government, to academia, and to the armed forces.
Okay, the armed forces too as well, yes. And you're an advisor on climate change, risk, and what it means for the armed forces, is that correct? And what it means for government policy?
Yes, it's slightly wider. So I wrote a report 4 years ago now, it was published, to talk about how the military needs to adapt to climate change, how it needs to understand what climate change is doing to the security of the world, and how they can take advantage of opportunities from new technology that they perhaps might not have looked at before. But it's wider than that. It's now looking at very closely what is the implications to UK's national security. Every country has a different interpretation of national security and different pressures. But in the UK specific, what is it that affects our national security as a result of climate change?
And give us a few of the headlines that you were giving to some of the members of Parliament that were with us today to, in a sense, learn what they need to do, in a sense, to deal with climate change.
So we're a country that imports a huge amount of food, perhaps up to 50% of food, and our food security is significantly at risk and vulnerable from both the actual getting the food here because people may not want to sell to us because they have other markets to sell to if they have a limited amount. That's happened in the past. Or actually the markets themselves reduce because of climate change. That's one side of it, but one of the ones that I think is most important is that we have incredibly high energy prices. We should be looking for what I call energy sovereignty, which is that we create our own energy. We have the best opportunity to create wind energy of almost any country in the world for our size. We can do solar. Of course, it's not as good as in the south of France, but it is still perfectly acceptable to have solar in this country. We have the ability to become less dependent and ultimately independent of energy from tyrants like Russia and energy prices on the spot market. And at the bottom of that, and then there's all sorts of other securities that we need to worry about. We need to worry about the Arctic melting because that will provide a whole new vista of competition, of resource competition, of travel competition, of the fact that Russia is reinforcing its military power around the Arctic for the first time since the Cold War. We need to understand that and understand what the implications are.
And of course, we are an island and we are surrounded by the sea. I mean, I can remember as a journalist on the Times newspaper, the UK government, the Conservatives at the time, I think Lilly was the Trade and Industry Minister, who cancelled all our research into tidal and wave machines. Now, those are coming back again slowly into the world, but if we could exploit that as a technology, we not only have a huge export potential, but a potential to be really completely independent on renewable energy. There's huge opportunities if we make the right choices.
That's right, and I think tidal and is difficult, but I think we're getting there, and we have the example north of mainland Scotland to show that actually it is possible. And most of Orkney's electricity is now done on tidal, so we have the opportunity there. I don't think it's just the renewable energy side. I think absolutely we could be independent if we take a degree of nuclear, we take a degree of geothermal, we take a degree of, that's deep geothermal closed loop, which is a different type of geothermal. If we take solar, if we take wind, and we take battery power, there is a way that we can be independent and secure. I have no doubts that that is absolutely the way the UK ought to go. But actually, there's another side to it, which is that forgive me the opportunity, but the Vikings in the 10th century considered the North Sea a lake. So what did they do? They inhabited all the area around the lake. So their mentality was, it's just a lake. We can cross the lake whenever we want to. We are dependent on our kingdoms in Norway, in Denmark, in Sweden or whatever, mostly Norway and Denmark, and also in this country. Why do I say that? Because actually we could create an independent energy circle around the lake of the North Sea. And if we thought in those terms, then actually we would have the ability to, if we don't have quite enough ourselves, we can rely on Norway, or we can rely on Denmark, or we can rely on northern France, or whatever. We create a community. It's really good for our security, and it's really good for our energy.
Last question. If we get this wrong, we could be facing massive food shortages. Food shortages very rapidly lead to instability in a country, and instability can lead to other things that we don't want, violence and whatever, the undermining of democracy and government, and the army being in the position of not defending us from a force from outside, but defending us from our own citizens who have, gone crazy because there's nothing available. Is that a genuine fear if we don't deal with this?
Yes, as simple as that. Civil unrest, there's this great quote, mankind is 9 meals away from anarchy. If we do not have enough food, if the cost of living or cost of food goes up significantly, what are we seeing at the moment? We're seeing a crime wave of shoplifting. Now, some of that shoplifting is opportunist shoplifting of clothes. Fine. But actually, the majority of the shoplifting that is taking place is shoplifting of food. Why? Because it is too expensive for people to be able to cope with. If it is not shoplifting because it's too expensive, but shoplifting because there isn't any, and so they're taking everything they can whilst they can, look at the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was sparked by food prices and shortage of food, and it created civil unrest across the whole of the Middle East and North Africa. That's what we could face. We're not immune to that just because we're Britain. We're immune to that if only because we have a slightly more stable society, but that stability can be completely reduced if you apply enough pressure. And that pressure will come from food shocks, from water shocks, from energy shocks, all coming together. It's the combination of all of them that will cause people to go on the streets.
And it was said here that the current food costs are in part linked with energy prices and also with climate change. The energy price spike because of Russia's war, but they also climate change as well. So that was mentioned today. So they made that link. I think the Arab Spring has a climate link as well. And so just to get back to climate change so we don't.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at why is our food more expensive? Well, it's partly because fertilizer is more expensive, because oil's more expensive because of the Russian-Ukraine war. That's part of it. But most of it is more expensive because actually it's more expensive to import food because the bread baskets of the world are suffering from climate change. And so there's less to go around. So, of course, it becomes more expensive.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. We're running a campaign called Make Science Great Again, because without good science, peer-reviewed science, we're all in ignorance. There are some populist politicians in west of Britain, in a large country there called the USA, and also populist politicians in UK, but also in Germany with the Alternative for Deutschland and other places too. So we've got a campaign called Make Science Great Again, and what it's basically saying is you can't own the colour red. We're taking the colour red back from those people that think the colour red is theirs, and also for defending science against attack. So you get this as a gift, and I hope you like it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Smile at the camera.